The city of Chicago, with its towering skyscrapers and bustling streets, is known for its vibrancy and diversity. But beneath the surface of this lively city lies a darker tale, one that would shock even the most seasoned detectives. Our story begins here, in the heart of Chicago, where a man named Alex Crawford first came into the spotlight. Alex was the kind of man who could walk into a room and instantly become the center of attention. Tall, with a charismatic smile and a sharp wit, he was the quintessential ladies' man. Born and raised in a middle-class family on the outskirts of Chicago, Alex had always been the popular one in school, the guy everyone wanted to be around. But beneath the charming exterior, there was something darker, something that even those closest to him could never have imagined. Alex worked as a real estate agent, a job that perfectly suited his smooth-talking nature. He had a knack for persuasion, able to sell even the most run-down properties to unsuspecting buyers. His colleagues admired him, his clients trusted him, and his friends envied him. But as successful as he was in his professional life, it was his personal life that would ultimately unravel into a tale of deception and murder. It all started innocently enough. Alex met Emily, a bright and ambitious young woman, at a charity event in downtown Chicago. She was immediately drawn to his confidence and charm, and it wasn't long before they were inseparable. But what Emily didn't know was that Alex was already involved with someone else, Sarah, a nurse at a local hospital whom he had been dating for several months. For most men, juggling two relationships would be a challenge, but for Alex, it was just the beginnings. His charm and smooth demeanor made it easy for him to lead a double life. He kept his relationships with Emily and Sarah separate, never allowing them to cross paths, and for a while, everything seemed to be going perfectly. But Alex wasn't satisfied with just two women in his life. He soon found himself drawn to others. Jessica, a young artist with a free spirit. Rachel, a corporate lawyer with a sharp mind. And Lily, a college student with dreams of becoming a journalist. Each of these women fell for Alex's charms, unaware that they were just one of 5 women he was stringing along. The city of Chicago had seen its fair share of scandals, but nothing quite like this. Alex's ability to maintain 5 separate relationships without raising suspicion was nothing short of remarkable. He was careful, methodical, ensuring that none of the women ever suspected his deceit. But, as with all things, the facade couldn't last forever. The cracks began to show when Sarah, the nurse, started to suspect that Alex wasn't being entirely truthful. She noticed the way he would avoid certain topics, the way he would disappear for hours without explanation. Sarah's suspicions grew, and she began to dig deeper, searching for answers to the questions that plagued her mind. What she found would set off a chain of events that no one could have predicted, leading to a crime that would shock the entire city of Chicago. But for now, the pieces of the puzzle were still falling into place, and Alex Crawford continued to play his dangerous game, unaware that his carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down. In this first part, we've only scratched the surface of Alex Crawford's twisted life. As we delve deeper into this story, we'll uncover the secrets that led to his downfall, the crimes that shocked the nation, and the chilling finale that left everyone questioning how one man could deceive so many for so long. As Sarah dug deeper into Alex's life, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The once charismatic and attentive man she had fallen for seemed distant, distracted, and increasingly elusive. She noticed the way he would avoid making plans for the future, the vague answers he gave when she asked about his day, and the frequent business trips that kept him away for long stretches of time. Sarah's suspicions gnawed at her, driving her to find out the truth. One evening, when Alex claimed he was working late, Sarah decided to pay him a surprise visit at his office. But when she arrived, the office was dark and empty. Confused and worried, Sarah decided to wait. As she sat in her car, watching the building, she noticed Alex leaving, except he wasn't alone. Walking beside him, laughing and holding his hand, was a woman she had never seen before. This was Emily, the bright and ambitious young woman who had captured Alex's heart at the charity event. The sight of them together sent a shockwave through Sarah's body. Her worst fears were confirmed. Alex was cheating on her. But as painful as the realization was, it was only the tip of the iceberg. Sarah didn't confront Alex right away. Instead, she decided to do more digging. She began following him discreetly, watching his every move. It didn't take long for her to discover that Emily wasn't the only other woman in Alex's life. Over the next few weeks, Sarah uncovered the existence of Jessica, the artist, Rachel, the lawyer, and Lily, the college student. Each of these women, like Sarah, had fallen for Alex's charm, and each of them believed they were the only one in his life. The discovery left Sarah reeling. How could one man deceive so many women so thoroughly? The more she uncovered, the more horrified she became. But as much as it pained her to know the truth, Sarah was determined to put an end to Alex's lies. She reached out to the other women, carefully and anonymously, sending them messages that hinted at the truth. Emily was the first to respond. The message she received was vague, but it was enough to make her start questioning Alex's behavior. She began noticing the same thing Sarah had: his evasiveness, his frequent absences, and the way he always seemed to have an excuse ready. Emily decided to follow her instincts, and soon she too uncovered the truth about Alex's other relationships. As Emily and Sarah connected, they realized they weren't alone. They reached out to Jessica, Rachel, and Lily, and one by one the women came to realize that they had all been deceived by the same man. Shock turned to anger, and the 5 women decided to confront Alex together, to make him answer for the lies he had told and the pain he had caused. But Alex was smarter than they anticipated. When the women finally confronted him, he didn't panic. Instead, he turned on the charm that had won them over in the first place. He apologized, spinning a story about how he had been confused, lost, and overwhelmed by his feelings. He claimed he never meant to hurt any of them, and that he had been trying to figure out who he truly loved. It was a risky move, but it worked, at least for the moment. The confrontation didn't end with the dramatic closure the women had hoped for. Instead, it left them even more confused, unsure of what to believe. Alex had managed to sow doubt in their minds, making them question their own judgment. But while he may have bought himself some time, the web of lies he had spun was beginning to unravel faster than he could control. The women, still reeling from the confrontation, began to dig deeper into Alex's life. What they found was even more disturbing than they had imagined. Alex wasn't just a charming real estate agent with a penchant for deceit. He was something far more sinister. As they pieced together the fragments of his past, a darker picture began to emerge, one that hinted at the lengths Alex would go to protect his secrets. The stage was set for a confrontation far more explosive than the one that had come before. Alex was running out of time, and the women were closing in. But what none of them realized was just how dangerous Alex Crawford truly was. As the walls closed in around him, Alex was already planning his next move, one that would change everything and leave a trail of devastation in its wake. In the next part, we'll delve into the shocking actions Alex takes to protect his secrets and the chilling events that follow, leading to a crime that will leave everyone in shock. The web of deceit is tightening, and the true nature of Alex Crawford is about to be revealed. As the days turned into weeks, Alex Crawford's charm began to wear thin, and the truth of his deceit became clearer to the 5 women he had ensnared. The fragile web of lies he had carefully woven was starting to fray at the edges, and Alex knew it. The women, Emily, Sarah, Jessica, Rachel, and Lily, were no longer fooled by his smooth words and feigned remorse. They had begun to talk, to share their stories with one another, and what they discovered was more horrifying than they had ever imagined. But Alex wasn't just a liar, he was a man who thrived on control. The realization that he was losing his grip on these women sent him into a spiral of desperation. He could feel the walls closing in, and with each passing day, his fear of being exposed grew. Alex knew he had to act, and act fast if he wanted to maintain control of the situation. But what the women didn't know was that Alex was far more dangerous than they had ever suspected. One night, in a secluded part of Chicago, Alex made his first move. He contacted Sarah, the nurse who had been the first to suspect him, and convinced her to meet him in person. He played on her emotions, telling her that he needed to explain everything face to face, that there was more to the story than she knew. Sarah, despite her better judgment, agreed to meet him, hoping for some kind of closure. They met at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of the city, a place where they wouldn't be disturbed. Sarah arrived first, her heart pounding with a mix of anxiety and hope. When Alex walked in, he was as composed as ever, his face a mask of calm. He sat down across from her, and for a moment they simply looked at each other, the tension thick in the air. But as soon as Alex began to speak, Sarah realized something was terribly wrong. His words were smooth, but there was a coldness in his eyes that she hadn't seen before. He didn't apologize. Instead, he started to blame her for everything that had gone wrong. He twisted the narrative, making it seem as though she'd been the one who had pushed him into the arms of other women, that her constant suspicion had driven him away. Sarah's heart sank as she realized that there would be no apology, no explanation, only more lies. And then, without warning, Alex reached across the table and grabbed her arm. His grip was tight, almost painful, and his voice dropped to a low, threatening whisper. "You don't know what I'm capable of, Sarah," he said, his eyes boring into hers. "If you keep digging, you'll regret it." Sarah was shaken to her core. She managed to pull her arm free and hurriedly left the cafe, her mind racing. Alex's threat had been clear, and for the first time Sarah felt truly afraid of the man she had once loved. But what she didn't realize was that this was only the beginning of Alex's descent into darkness. Over the next few days, Alex's behavior became increasingly erratic. He began to isolate himself, cutting off contact with the other women and avoiding his usual haunts. His once well-groomed appearance started to deteriorate, and his colleagues noticed that he seemed distracted, paranoid even. But it wasn't just paranoia. Alex was planning something that would ensure none of the women could expose him. His first target was Emily, the ambitious young woman who had initially fallen for his charms at the charity event. Emily had been the most vocal in confronting Alex, and he knew she was the one rallying the other women against him. One evening, Alex showed up at Emily's apartment unannounced. He was calm, collected, and even brought flowers as a peace offering. Emily, wary but wanting to believe that Alex was finally ready to be honest, let him in. They talked for a while, the conversation strained but civil. But as the night wore on, Alex's true intentions became clear. He began to criticize Emily, bringing up every small argument they had ever had, every moment of doubt she had expressed. The conversation grew heated, and before Emily could fully grasp what was happening, Alex's anger boiled over. In a moment of terrifying clarity, she realized that Alex wasn't there to apologize or explain. He was there to silence her. The details of what happened next remain unclear, but by the time the neighbors heard the commotion and called the police, it was too late. Emily was found lifeless in her apartment, the victim of a brutal and calculated attack. Alex had fled the scene, leaving behind a trail of blood and unanswered questions. The news of Emily's death sent shockwaves through the city. The other women, Sarah, Jessica, Rachel, and Lily, were devastated, but more than that, they were terrified. They knew that Alex was still out there, and that he would stop at nothing to keep his secrets hidden. The once charming man they had all fallen for had revealed himself to be a cold-blooded killer, and they knew they could be next. As the police launched a manhunt for Alex, the women were placed under protective custody, but the fear that he would find them lingered. They were haunted by the thought that the man they had trusted, the man they had loved, could turn on them so violently. But even as they feared for their lives, they knew that they couldn't let Alex get away with what he had done. The city of Chicago was gripped by the news of Emily's murder, and the media painted Alex as a monster, a predator who had preyed on vulnerable women. But what the public didn't know was that Alex was already planning his next move, one that would shock everyone and leave the police scrambling to keep up. In the next part, we'll follow Alex as he continues his desperate attempt to escape justice, leading to another shocking crime that will leave the remaining women in a state of terror. The darkness within Alex is only growing, and the final confrontation is drawing near. Emily's murder sent shockwaves through Chicago, casting a dark shadow over the city. The once vibrant streets now seem filled with fear and suspicion, as news of Alex Crawford's heinous crime dominated every headline. The city was on high alert, and the police launched an extensive manhunt to bring him to justice. But Alex, ever the cunning manipulator, was always one step ahead, vanishing into the city's underbelly without a trace. For the four women who remained, Sarah, Jessica, Rachel and Lily, the fear was palpable. They were now living in a nightmare, each of them haunted by the knowledge that Alex was still out there, somewhere, plotting his next move. The police assured them they were safe, but no amount of protection could ease the terror that gripped their hearts. They knew Alex better than anyone. They knew how calculated, how ruthless he could be. Days turned into weeks, and the manhunt for Alex continued with little success. It was as if he had vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. But while the police struggled to find him, Alex was meticulously planning his next steps. He knew the authorities would be watching the women closely, so he kept his distance, biding his time and waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. In the meantime, the women were living in constant fear. Sarah, the first to suspect Alex's deceit, was racked with guilt, believing she had somehow set these tragic events in motion. Jessica, the free-spirited artist, found herself unable to create, her once vibrant imagination now clouded by terror. Rachel, the sharp-minded lawyer, was consumed with anger, determined to see Alex brought to justice, but powerless to do anything but wait. And Lily, the youngest of the group, was barely holding on, her dreams of becoming a journalist shattered by the horror she was living through. But Alex wasn't content with just hiding. He knew that his time was running out and that the police would eventually catch up with him if he didn't act. He needed to eliminate the remaining women before they could turn on him completely, before they could reveal the full extent of his lies and deceit. But this time, he would be more careful. He couldn't afford another mistake like the one with Emily. His first target was Lily, the college student with dreams of journalism. She was the youngest, the most vulnerable, and Alex knew she would be the easiest to manipulate. He had always had a soft spot for her, and he knew exactly how to play on her emotions. One evening, while Lily was staying in a safe house under police protection, she received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was familiar, soothing even. It was Alex, but instead of threats, his voice was filled with remorse. He told her he was sorry, that he had made terrible mistakes, and that he wanted to make things right. He begged her to meet him just one last time so he could explain everything. Lily, who had once loved Alex deeply, felt her resolve weakening. Despite everything, part of her still wanted to believe that the man she had fallen for wasn't a monster. Against her better judgment, Lily agreed to meet Alex, but she insisted on doing it in a public place, somewhere safe. Alex, knowing he had her where he wanted her, agreed. They met in a crowded cafe downtown, a place where Lily felt secure, but as soon as she saw Alex, Her heart sank. He looked different, disheveled, almost desperate. The charm that had once captivated her was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating demeanor. The conversation was short. Alex didn't waste time with apologies or explanations. Instead, he leaned in close and whispered, "If you say anything to the police, you'll end up just like Emily." Lily froze, the words sending a chill down her spine. The threat was clear, and all the fear she had been holding back came rushing to the surface. Before she could respond, Alex stood up and walked out of the cafe, leaving Lily trembling in her seat. She knew she had made a terrible mistake. The police were alerted, and they searched the area, but Alex was already gone, slipping back into the shadows where he could continue to plot his next move. But this time, Alex's actions didn't go unnoticed. A surveillance camera outside the cafe had caught a glimpse of him as he left, giving the police their first solid lead in weeks. They now had a clear image of Alex and a direction in which to search. The hunt was back on, and this time they were determined not to let him slip away. For Alex, the noose was tightening. He could feel the pressure mounting as the police closed in, but instead of fleeing, he decided to turn the tables. He contacted Jessica next, the artist who had always been so trusting, so open to his advances. But Jessica wasn't like Lily. She had hardened since Emily's death, her fear turning to anger and resolve. When Alex reached out to her, she didn't respond with fear. Instead, she contacted the police, informing them of his attempt to meet her. The police set up a sting operation, using Jessica as bait to lure Alex out into the open. It was a risky move, but one they hoped would finally bring an end to his reign of terror. The meeting was arranged at a quiet park on the outskirts of the city, a place where Alex thought he would have the upper hand. But as he approached Jessica, thinking he could once again manipulate her, he noticed something was off. The park was too quiet, too still. His instincts kicked in, and just as he was about to turn and flee, the police moved in, surrounding him on all sides. But Alex wasn't done yet. In a desperate bid to escape, he pulled a knife from his jacket, taking Jessica hostage. The police, caught off guard, hesitated, giving Alex the chance to drag Jessica into the nearby woods, using her as a human shield. The situation was tense, with the police unable to get a clear shot and Alex growing more desperate by the second. In the chaos, Jessica managed to break free, but not before Alex slashed at her arm, leaving a deep, bloody wound. She stumbled away, screaming for help, as Alex disappeared into the dense woods, the police hot on his trail. The manhunt reached a fever pitch as officers combed the area, but once again, Alex managed to evade capture, slipping through their fingers like a ghost. Jessica was rushed to the hospital, her wound serious but not life-threatening. The attack, however, left her traumatized, and the other women even more fearful for their lives. They knew now that Alex was capable of anything, and that he wouldn't stop until they were all silenced. But while Alex had escaped, the police were closing in. They had his face, his movements, and now a wounded woman who was determined to see him brought to justice. The final confrontation was looming, and everyone knew it would end in blood. In the final part, we'll see the dramatic conclusion of this twisted tale, where Alex's desperation leads him to make one last shocking move that will leave everyone, including the FBI, stunned. The hunter is now the hunted, and the endgame is in sight. The hunt for Alex Crawford had reached its climax. The once confident and charming man was now a desperate fugitive, cornered and running out of options. The police and FBI had joined forces, creating a net that tightened around him with every passing hour. But Alex, true to his nature, wasn't going to go down without a fight. He had one final masterful deception left up his sleeve, a plan so audacious that it would either grant him freedom or destroy him completely. Alex's mind was racing as he moved through the darkened streets of Chicago. The city, which had once been his playground, now felt like a labyrinth closing in on him. But he still had one advantage: the element of surprise. While the authorities focused on tracking him down, Alex was already plotting his next move. He knew the police would expect him to flee, to hide and wait for the heat to die down, but Alex had something else in mind. He was going to confront the FBI directly, turning their own investigation against them. To pull off his final deception, Alex needed a place where he could operate without being immediately discovered. He found that in a rundown warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a place long abandoned and perfect for what he had in mind. He set up his base there, knowing that the clock was ticking and that every second counted. The first part of his plan involved reaching out to the remaining women, Sarah, Rachel, and Lily. He knew that the FBI had them under protection, but Alex was a master manipulator. He used burner phones, fake identities, and even paid off a few unsavory characters to deliver messages that would sow confusion and panic. He sent cryptic notes claiming that he had evidence that would clear his name, that the real killer was someone else, and that he wanted to meet them one last time to explain everything. But the women were no longer the naive victims he once manipulated. They had been through too much, had seen too much to believe Alex's lies anymore. Instead of falling into his trap, they immediately informed the FBI, who saw this as an opportunity to finally bring Alex to justice. The FBI set up a sting operation, planning to use the meeting as a way to capture him. What the FBI didn't know was that this was exactly what Alex had hoped for. He was counting on them to take the bait, to focus all their resources on capturing him at the meeting site. In the meantime, he was already preparing his real escape. On the night of the planned meeting, the FBI moved into position, surrounding the designated location, a secluded park on the edge of the city. They were ready for anything, or so they thought. As the clock ticked closer to the meeting time, tension was high. Agents were in position, snipers ready, and a SWAT team on standby. But as the minutes passed, something strange happened. Alex never showed. Instead, a series of explosions rocked the area, throwing the entire operation into chaos. The explosions were small, just enough to cause confusion and panic, but not to injure anyone. In the midst of the chaos, a lone figure appeared, dressed in a hooded jacket, face obscured. The agents assumed it was Alex and moved in to apprehend him, but as they closed in, they realized they had been tricked. The figure was not Alex, but a decoy, one of the unsavory characters Alex had paid off to take his place. The real Alex was miles away by then, executing the final part of his plan. He had meticulously planted false clues and manipulated the FBI's own procedures against them, leading them on a wild goose chase while he made his real move. Using forged documents and a stolen identity, Alex had managed to secure a flight out of the country, heading to a place where he could disappear completely, beyond the reach of American law enforcement. But fate had one final twist in store. As Alex boarded the plane, confident that he had outsmarted everyone, he noticed something was off. The flight crew seemed nervous, and there were too many passengers who didn't seem quite right. As the plane taxied down the runway, Alex's heart began to race, not with excitement, but with dread. He realized too late that the FBI had anticipated his move after all. The plane came to a sudden stop, and the cabin lights flickered on. Federal agents flooded the aisle, guns drawn, and in that moment, Alex knew the game was over. He had been caught in his own web, outsmarted by the very people he thought he could deceive. The arrest of Alex Crawford was headline news across the country. The story of the man who had manipulated, lied, and killed his way through life, only to be brought down by his own arrogance, captivated the public. The surviving women, Sarah, Rachel, and Lily, were finally free from the shadow of his terror, though they would carry the scars of his betrayal forever. As Alex was led away in handcuffs, he couldn't help but smile. Even in defeat, he had managed to pull off one last deception. He had made the world believe in his invincibility, even if only for a moment. But now, as the cold reality of his situation set in, he knew there would be no more tricks, no more escapes. The hunter had finally become the hunted, and his reign of terror was over. In the end, Alex's story became a cautionary tale, a reminder of how far someone can fall when they believe they are above the law, above morality, above everything. But more than that, it was a testament to the resilience of those who survived his cruelty, who refused to be broken by the darkness he brought into their lives. And as Alex faced a lifetime behind bars, the world moved on, a little wiser and a little less trusting of the charms of a man like Alex Crawford.